Definitely a lot of tricky things going on in this excerpt. I won't repeat any of the things I said about shifting and harmonics from the previous videos. Go look them up if you need that help. But right off the bat, first make sure that your staccatos are starting off very, very crisp and in sharp contrast to the Scheherazade excerpt. You can really embrace the open A string in this one. It's a very bright and happy excerpt, basically. That being said, still work hard to avoid any hunking or squawking that the A string might get you. Right at the very beginning here, you just want to start with your bow totally pressed into the string, and as soon as the note actually starts, it completely releases while still staying on the string. Like so. Starting at measure 10, there are a few notes, or a few quarter notes I should say, that don't have dots over them. I interpreted most of these as an editing mistake, at least at measure 10 and 11, but that might be something you would want to ask your teacher about, your orchestra teacher, as you wouldn't want to get docked any points for that, for making an interpretation. Measure 21 and 9, I think it's fine if the quarter notes are smooth there, but at 10 and 11 especially, I find at this tempo, which is kind of slow, the long quarter note makes it a bit dull. But again, that's an interpretation. For many of these shifts in here, you want to focus on the smallest interval. For example, at measure 4, you're going from F sharp to D. You don't want to be thinking F sharp to D, that's a scary interval, but rather the E to D, which is only a whole step. Very similar concept at measure 11, or as it's marked on the page, 47. Go the A to E. The perfect fourth is definitely a very scary interval, but you only want to think about your F sharp going down to the E. This is a very common way to think about shifting so that you avoid, again, scary intervals. At measure 9, going from that high harmonic, as you may have noticed, I decided to just press the harmonic down because it is a rather long note and vibrate it. But if you're not feeling so bold, you can play the harmonic. Just be careful, because going from a harmonic, doing the repeat, going back to an open string is a very risky move. It's very easy to go from a harmonic to your open string and maintain the harmonic sound. There are technically 3 ways to avoid this. I would say one is a bit of a retake, but the retake still needs to start very crisp, very dug in, to ensure that that doesn't happen. That one I would probably recommend most of all. It's probably the safest. The other, if this is pretty fast, or if you are going much faster, would be to just do the next bow very, very articulately. That one can be a little bit dangerous, as you heard. It didn't sound too great the first time I tried it. The last one I mostly reserve for when I'm trying to slur a harmonic to an open string, and that is a light pluck will actually make sure that the note comes out correctly. So any of those 3 tricks will probably work there. But again, I probably recommend the retake most of all. Getting into, I guess, the hard bit of this, measure 13, or the pickup to 14, there's a lot of tricky shifts going on here. And it's really hard to say anything about them other than move your hand quickly. It's hard to focus on any smaller intervals. But that being said, there is another thing you can kind of focus on here that should help you out, and that is just knowing that starting the last three notes of measure 13, this is a technique Bach and a lot of other Baroque composers use called a sequence. Now, a sequence is when you had any melodic figure, it can just be scale or literal melody, that would be repeated 3 times, either steadily rising or falling, and then the last time the sequence would be broken and it moves on to something else. So in this case, the sequence, or the theme of the sequence, is this. And then it's repeated up a step, up another step, and then we're broken out of it. So how can this help you? Well, the way I would look at it is that you're essentially breaking apart these introductions of the sequence melodically and a little bit dynamically, not so much rhythmically because you don't want to take time out of the music, but so that in your mind they're separate, and you can separate that long shift with something other than time, basically. So that's kind of me exaggerating separation. That was probably a bit more accurate, if a tad rushed, I'm assuming. But I think that would at least help you to separate it and organize it in at least a different, helpful way. The last one, the sequence that breaks out of the sequence, I find especially difficult considering you're having to do 4-4-4. Very difficult fingering. That one I would use this idea most of all, because what you want to focus on is so that when you cross over to the D string, you are truly beginning something new. Again, only melodically and dynamically, not with your rhythm. But hopefully you can kind of hear what I'm talking about as I organize it that way. I think the last thing really to be discussed in this one is measure 18. This horrible interval that they have you doing. You probably noticed on the video that I was just stretching my hand to it. This is something I often don't like to do. It's risky. It doesn't always end up very in tune. And if your hand isn't big enough, then I just recommend you don't try doing that. The alternative, of course, is to shift very quickly, twice in a row. Not good ideas, but I think you can hear that I'm making more of a separation. Oh, that was bad. But it is very easy to smear it there quite a bit. For future reference, so that if you feel like you cannot do that fingering, though I believe you have to for this audition, I would recommend an alternative, probably, although it's still tricky, is basically shifting up into third position so that you only have to shift or make that shift from E to B once. Again, that's probably not what you're going to do in this audition, but just so you know that there is an alternative to stretching out your hand a lot and trying to make a very quick double shift. So I believe that's everything I have for this excerpt. I hope this helped you, and I hope you have very good luck on your auditions.